Speak on the Show 2021, episode 13. It's an unscripted Saturday, y'all. Unscripted. Y'all ready? Let's go. Good morning. Welcome to Speak On. I'm your boy, R.W. Coolins. First and foremost, giving honor to the guy who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. How y'all doing? 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, early morning, Saturday morning. We're back. We're back again doing the same thing. The clock on the wall says it's time. Let's get these formalities out the way. rwcoolins.com. That's the website. You can go there, get all the information you want, all the information you need. All the links are there. We're broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube this morning as usual. So if you got a comment or something, you can post it in. We'll bring it up on the screen. Let's just talk about it. Let's get it. Let's just do what we do every Saturday morning about this time. rwcoolins.com. Also, share. Send it out to your friends. Invite your friends to listen in. Let's get some more people to come on in here and participate in what we got going on the show. Call-in number 844-904-2665, excuse me, 844-904-2665. That's the call-in number. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. But all we ask is say what you mean what you say when you call in. We come in as friends, we leave as friends. Whatever comment you got is the comment you got. We're going to take it, we're going to decipher it, we're going to go through it, and then we're going to take it from there. Good morning, sis. Good morning, April Wheaton. Appreciate the support. Good morning, Lady Michelle. Appreciate the support. Good morning. Appreciate the support. And cuz Sharon Carroll, appreciate the support all the way from Miami. Appreciate the support. We got a lot of East Coast on here. We got the DMV, we got Philly, we got Miami, and now we got my brother Brian Hoodie out here in out there in California. Good morning, sir. How you doing? Appreciate the support. So it's a Saturday morning, y'all. And let's go ahead and get into this because this is something that I think needs to be talked about. I think it's something that we need to really, truly discuss. I think it's something that we take for granted that. Let me be transparent for a minute. The show today, I named it Unscripted for a reason. Over the last 2 weeks, over this last week, let's go over this last week, because the week before I did a little bit, but over this last week, I really haven't watched any news. I really haven't perused, as I like to say, Facebook, internet, anything like that over the last week. So the show today is I call it Unscripted because it's going to be coming from the dome. It's just going to be straight up. And there's some things I want to talk about as far as when you block all of the outside noise out. Terrence Collins, good morning, Uncle Rodney, Hillary and Terrence. What's up, family? I appreciate y'all's support. Thanks for tuning in. So over the last week, I decided to shut it down. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on why. If you all remember, if you tuned in last week, if you didn't tune in last week, you can go back and watch the show, YouTube, Facebook, anywhere you want to. But if you tuned in last week, near the end of the show, I got to talking about the Derek Chauvin trial, which is about the murder of George Floyd. For y'all that don't know, it's the Derek Chauvin trial, but we're not going to get into that because I don't want to get into too much of that today. But I got a little emotional. And it took me back to a video I did when the event first happened. And the video was, I'm not okay. And this week, after last week, this week I said, I'm not watching anymore. I can't watch anymore at this time, because rehashing and listening to everything that they were talking about the Derek Chauvin trial, you know, what George Floyd had in his system, all the different things to assassinate his character as who he is as a man. I couldn't watch. I didn't want to watch it. I turned it off, didn't turn it on. I didn't read any news about it at all as well, because I needed time. I needed a mental health check for myself. And if we go back and we think about this, from the time I started the show back up, and I can't remember exactly what it was somewhere in 2019, somewhere in there, all the way up through 2020, up until to this last show we just did last week, it's been politics, it's been senseless killings, anything you can think of that has impacted what we call the community in the United States as a whole, we've discussed, of what is being done to certain people, how people are being treated, how, the racisms and all the different things that have been going on in the world, in the United States as a whole, we've discussed. And over this last week, I took it upon myself. And here's the funny thing about it. And let me caveat this. This week hiatus per se, away from, the TV and the reading the news and seeing what's going on with current events and things like that, was not something that I planned. Now, this is where I think people really need to understand the goodness of God when you discuss things like this and things come to you in a way that you don't understand, but you understand to the point that God is in control. And I'm just going to put it in that aspect. God is in control. Because what I found out is that by not consciously doing it, but something said, don't turn this on. Don't read this. Don't worry about that. Block it all out. Get grounded again in who you are. Let me say that again. Get grounded again in who you are. Not the information you're providing, not the show that you're doing, not the supervisor or manager that you are at work and you hear these discussions, any of those things or those titles that you have other than, and I'm going to change it today, other than being Rodney W. Collins, eliminate it. And by doing that, it revealed so many things. And the things it revealed were, and it's a plethora of different things, but I'm just going to touch on a few here and there. One of the things it revealed is that by doing this show weekly, providing you information, giving you, what's important, what's not important, and how racism and different entities play parts in what goes on with us and what happens to us in life, it causes the person sitting in this seat, when you see all these different shows. Now, I can't speak for all of them, but I can only speak for me. But when you see all these different shows and they're providing this information and they're doing these things, you have to understand that it takes something from them to rehash and give you the information of everything's going on from a different perspective. And what I found out was, in that moment and in that week of just sitting down, as I like to say, because normally I don't do a show after I decide to sit down, but I wanted to do it today because I think it's something that we all need to understand. I think it's something we all need to take a break at some time and do. Because everything that's going on in the world becomes us. Everything we take in through our eyes becomes a part of us. Everything that we hear through our ears becomes a part of us. And because of that, everything we take in, even though we process it in different ways and we process it to the understanding that of what we want it to be or what we believe it to be, it still becomes a part of who we are. And what I found out about myself over this time, it made me question things about how I feel when racism comes into play, because something that revealed itself to me is that to a certain extent in my life, through my travels and the places I've been sheltered to a certain extent from the racism that I speak of when these events happen. And I don't say that to say I'm sheltered to the point that none of these things have ever happened to me. I say sheltered to the point that when I see these things and I talk about these things now, and I bring this news to you about something that's going on where racism is affecting what's going on, and I tell you how we need to do this and do that, I've realized over this last week by sitting down and turning everything off and shutting things off that I've been sheltered to a certain extent of being truly affected by what goes on when racism happens. Now, in that aspect, I'm not saying that because as a black man, I'm like, this never happened to me. No, I've had racist things happen to me, but to the extent of what I report, because it's in the news, I feel like I have been sheltered through many of my years. Now, in the military, and I'll go there first, there was an unwritten rule. It was written and unwritten that racism was something that was not tolerated, but you still had the undertones there. You had people that did certain things to you this way, that way, but it was not as visual as it is now through the media and everything else. And I think because of that, and because of what I report and things that happen, just like I just mentioned about the Derek Chauvin trial, when you sit there and you listen to these things about assassinating someone's character, not because of what they did, but because they're trying to get the other person who did something wrong off, it really makes you reflect on the fact of what my experiences are and what I've experienced as far as what we call the racism and different things like that, the discrimination, may not be to the full extent of anybody else's, but it doesn't minimize it. But even though it doesn't minimize it, it should also take into account for us to look at things with a broader scope. Because we hear most people say, well, that didn't happen to me, but because it didn't happen to you does not make it right. And I say that because when you do your retrospective thinking and you look back over your life and you look back over different things that are going on, you have to take into account that the things that you see may not affect you directly, but indirectly as you take it in, it's going to affect you long term. I'm no psychologist. I'm no mental health expert, but I'm telling you what I know from my own experiences and what I've seen and what I did when I decided to block everything out this week. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it was I sat back and I thought about all the people that you've ever come across in your life. And in our lives, we come across people that we keep near and dear to us, but there's also people that we eliminate because it's time for them to go. But we always talk about the ones that we keep near and dear to us. And some of the phrases we use is, what we say to people. Let me know if you need anything. I got your back. Don't hesitate to call me if you need anything. I'm praying, and in times of, tragedy or otherwise, praying for you and the family. These are all statements that we make from our mouths that we may truly mean in our hearts. But when we say these things from our mouths, do we truly mean it, or is it just the thing to say? Because I have to check myself with this, and I'm pretty sure some of you do too, because sometimes we get so caught up in the moment of trying to make that person feel better about what's going on, or make ourselves feel better about us being in that situation to make it seem like we're there no matter what. But how many steps do we take after we say that to actually be there? It becomes cliche after a while when we say, if you need anything, call me. But in the same tense, we're hoping, Lord, please don't let them call me. Or we ignore the call when it comes in. I bring that up because we all know DMX passed away yesterday. And over the years, we've seen his strife, his struggles, everything he's gone through. And the one thing that came to my mind as I'm watching this play out from the time that they said he was in the hospital, he's in a vegetative state and all that. And I sat there and I watched it play out. I didn't, like I said, this week I didn't hear anything, but last week I heard it, and then I heard that he passed away. But then what comes to me is the fact of, with this man, let's go with this man, Earl Simmons, and who he was to the industry, the music industry, as a man. My question always comes back to, where were all the people who were so-called friends within the industry when he was going through all these struggles? And then I correlate that to us. Where are all the people that say, call me if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out, and so on and so forth? Where are they when we're in our darkest moments and we need them? How do you know that someone needs you if they don't reach out? How do you find someone who is in need to just be there for them if they don't reach out? What do we do as individuals when we're going through this and we can't find a way out? The cliches we use, that, that one, am I my brother's keeper? And, all the ones you can think about. All the different things we say to each other to give us some sense of security verbally. What do we do when the action needs to happen? What? Because, we talk about the distance between us, and when people are far away from us and everything like that. And they say this, that old saying, with love and everything, that distance makes the heart grow fonder. All those different things we talk about. But when it comes time to what I call crunch time, who can you count on? And then the biggest question is, who can count on you? Because we'll say it from our mouths, but do we do it with our actions? Good morning, Zupons. Appreciate the support, bro. Sensei. No sensei, bro. Just putting it out there. But when I think about Mr. Earl Simmons, aka DMX, and I think about all the things we've seen play out in the media with his struggles and everything, and now we're at this finalization of his life. And what you're going to see is everybody's going to be putting posts up with his videos, and everybody will put up, different stories. The people that used to hang around him, they'll put all these stories up and everything like that about how good a guy he was and everything like that. And the thing about it is, for those who truly cared about him before we got to this point, and let's just be real here. I'm a caveat here. I haven't heard what the final cause of death was. It was going from an overdose, and it was just a heart attack. It was a COVID shot. It was so many different things that everybody was saying. You just don't know. But what I will say is, up until this point where we are here with his death, going back, where were they? And then I want you to correlate that to yourself. Because last week we talked about people with drug addiction. We talked about people who are struggling. We talked about, we interjected how people are going through things. And the question I ask is, when we know these things are going, because there's people in our families that are struggling with different things, with who they are, their identity, and all these different things. But where are we when they need us? Not at the end, but now, in the now. Where are we? Because lip service is one thing. Actions speak more. You hear it when you're in relationships. Oh, you tell me something, but you don't do it. Actions. I don't have a female voice. I was trying to impersonate one, but men do it too. Let's just be real. Good morning, Michelle Long. Appreciate the support. But this is where I had time to sit and block out all the noise and think about the big perspective of life. Because I like I said, I've taken all the things in that I report, and I find myself, when I look in the mirror, not being me, but being everything that I've taken in at this point. I've asked myself numerous times over this last week, what changed? What happened? Who are you? The key one, who are you at this point? The double nickel is at the end of this month for me. But y'all don't know what double nickel, the 55, number 55. I got more years behind me than I got in front of me. Let's just be honest about it. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but at the end of the day, when you get to that 50-year mark, you got more years behind you probably than you got in front of you. But when you sit and you reflect and you think about these things, the question you ask yourself is, who am I at this point? Because all the things we've taken in, all the injustices we talk about, all the different things that have happened over your life, and you get to a certain point in your life where you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, damn, who am I? And when I say who am I, I'm not talking about who people see you as. I'm not talking about your position that you have at work. I'm not talking about you may be a deacon at church. I'm not talking about the choir director. I ain't talking about any of those type of titles that are put on you. I'm talking about to your core, to your values, to your principles. Who are you at this point? Not to everybody else, to you. Who are you to you? And I'm gonna warn you, when you get to that point and you start looking in that mirror and asking yourself that question and you're trying to figure out, it's gonna hurt. Oh, it's gonna hurt. Because what you're gonna realize is you have become more of what everybody wants you to be rather than who you really are. You fit into this block of thinking that you have to be a certain way because certain people see you that way. You know, back in the day, I remember hearing our elders as we were growing up and we were kids, and we were saying, you would hear your elders or your parents or somebody talk about somebody in their family or somebody they knew, and they would say, she putting on airs, or he's putting on airs, or he think he's better, or he's uppity. All these different verbiages you put on there. But the thing is, they put these labels on that person because of who they were in their perspective. So the question comes in, who are you outside of everyone else's perspective? How do you get back to being you? With everything going on in the world that we talk about, you know, the different things that happen, the different things that affect us, the things that we see that emotionally grasp onto us on that day at that moment. What happens with that shift? What happens with that change? What happens to us with all our innocence, with all our goals, with all our dreams, and continually to stay on a path of achieving what we want to achieve, but with all these things we take on, who have we become compared to who we want to be? I tell y'all, it felt good to not turn the TV on. It felt good to just be free. Because, and I say to be free because you're not bound to, I have to watch this, or I have to read this, or I need to know what's going on with this. It felt free. I felt free to be able to just sit back and not feel like I'm, confined to listening to, watching, and encapsulating my mindset on the things that are in the news or they are on Facebook, and what people's opinions are and all that kind of stuff we think about. Because what happened was, when you start looking at those things, it was a release. And it was something that was invigorating to the point of understanding that these things that go on in the world should not dictate how I see the world. The things that happen in the world should not dictate how I see the world, should not dictate how I see other folks, should not dictate how I see my friends differently because of what they posted on a Facebook page or a comment they made or anything else. Because if they were truly a friend in the beginning, their opinion should not change how you see them now. However, there's a thin line there. Let's just be honest. Because if you feel that way about George Floyd, how do I truly know you don't feel that way about me? If I feel that way about Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump, how do you know that I don't feel that way about you? Only because you're a supporter. Only because I, can understand what their person's saying. You get the drift I'm saying. So we put people in this box not because of who they are or who we thought they were or who they were to us, but we put them in a box of who they've become because of who we think they support or what their mindset is about what's going on in the world. How do you separate it? Because at one time, you could laugh, you could joke, you could drink, you could sit around and talk about life. And then something changed. And what changed is experiences, personal experiences. You realize when you look in the mirror that you're looked at differently no matter what you do in life. And you realize that no matter what goes on in life and no matter how many times people say it out of the mouth, the words are different than the actions. And over and over and over again, we get to a point where we truly have to understand in this big world where we fit in. But then the question comes in, are you created by God to fit in or stand out? Are you created to fit in or stand out? Those are the questions. Those are the things that you have to really take in and understand that each day that you take all this information in, it becomes a part of you. It's no different than when you eat food. When you eat food, it becomes a part of your being. It becomes a part of your body. It's going to process through your system, but it becomes a part of your body. The mental, the different things that we take in every day, the visuals we see, the way we're treated, all these things, you may forgive, but you won't forget. The mental. And then as much as you're taking in and as much as it's affecting you, good morning, Jacket Banks, appreciate support. As much as you're taking in, all those different things you're taking in and everything that's going on with you, when do you find time to just release it and become who you were and who you want to be rather than becoming everything that you continually take in? How do we handle that? How do we get to that point where it's a stable understanding of this is who I am? Because, you hear the line all the time. People will say, well, don't let what's happened to you define you. Oh, it's so good. We're so glad that we don't look like what we've been through. All these things are relevant, but all these things can become cliche unless you do action behind them. Good morning, Melvin Jackson. Appreciate your support, bro. But this is the week that I've had. This is the week that I decided, well, let me say this. It was an unintended intervention, on my part of what with this week and not turning the news on and any of that kind of stuff. It had nothing to do with me. This was something from an outside source, and the man upstairs doesn't make mistakes when he puts things on you to make you relook at things differently. But it's just something that I think everyone needs to take the time to sit back for a minute and just block out everything. Block out everything, because what we know, and this show could be just as guilty as ABC, NBC, CBS, any of them. You start getting all this information in, the things that they talk about, and some of the things that you take in causes anger. It causes us to become angry at the systems. It causes us to become angry at the people. It starts to make us look differently at the people reporting it. It makes us look differently at the people who don't look like us, who may be on the other side of thinking of what we think. How do you get past that? How do you move past that? What do you change, as I said, to make it, to get it to some sense of what we've been saying normalcy through this whole pandemic? And that's the other caveat. With this pandemic, we have the vaccinations now, people getting vaccinated and everything. And there's just hiccups, they said that there was a bad batch of Johnson and Johnson. And, there were some people that got sick from the vaccination and all this kind of stuff. And you hear all these different conspiracy theories about who, what, when, where, and why. And you start taking these things in, and depending on what side of the fence you are, you believe what you believe, because that's who you believe is giving you the honest truth at the time when you want to hear what you want to hear. If you don't want to get the vaccine, you're going to listen to everything about what's negative about it. If you want the vaccine, you're going to listen to everything positive about it. It's just the way we're made. And why are we made that way? Because we've been brought up to believe what we understand to be true. No matter who's saying it, no matter how they're saying it, because one of the big arguments is, how can you believe someone who is not in the industry of healthcare about the vaccine over someone who's actually in the healthcare industry who's telling you about the vaccine? Where did we get to the point that we believe the people who have nothing to do with this over the people who have done it their entire career? Because we've ingested so much information from both sides of the fence, or whoever's telling it on this side and that side, that once we get it in our minds and we start thinking and we started putting our experiences to it, and we start looking at it from our own perspective, and then we're listening over here, and then you got other people in your ear that you truly trust, that's in your family, your loved ones, your friends, and then you come up to a conclusion of, either I believe it or I don't. But when did it get to the point where we just take the truth as far as what we know to be true, and that's it? When did we start allowing influencers who have their own agenda to influence our decisions on what we know is right and wrong? How did we get to this point where we let propaganda, untruths, be told as alternative information, and we accept it? Not all, but some. But then we start questioning the people that have your best interests at hand more than those who could give a damn about you. And then we have to ask the question, the overall question. And you hear it many times when they talk about school and everything like this. But the question is, do these things happen because we've taken God out of the equation? Yeah, I went there. Is it because we took God out of the equation? Or is God still in an equation, but it depends on what they want to use as far as being the word of God? See, people use things for their own benefit at the time when it's going to benefit them at the expense of you. But we embrace it because it's coming from a biblical place, per se. False prophets, that's what they call it. It's just one of those things, people, that I come to you guys every Saturday morning, and I give you this information that I look at. I give you this information that I read. I give you the information from a perspective of what I understand it to be, because I have to go by my experiences when I present it to you, because that's all I can go by. If I just go by simply what's written, it leaves a broad area, and everyone wants to know what's your opinion, because you're the one with the microphone. The pressure's on you to let us know what's real, what's not real from your perspective. But when I give you my perspective, that's never the end all to be all for anything we discuss. You have to draw your own conclusions from the information you get. So you can't, and I would hope you would, in twofold. You would hold me accountable for the things I said, but you don't hold me more accountable than you do the other folks that do the same thing. I'm accountable for what I say because that's how I feel. If you want to hold me accountable for what I say, fine. But don't hold me to a different standard of mainstream media or anybody else that's reporting on the same thing just because of who I am, where I sit, and anything like that. Because my experiences are just as important as their experiences. So don't minimize the message just because it's a different messenger. Don't separate the message from the messenger just because you see it differently in the eyes of who's saying it rather than what's being said. It's just that simple. But to be able to sit down, as I like to say, reflect rather than dwell, don't dwell, but to reflect on just this past 4 months, if you want, since the election or the first of the year. And we can go all the way back to when we got into the pandemic. There's a lot of things that have gone on with us personally, as collectively, all across the board, because we've had a lot of things go on in this last year that's going to affect us until we meet our maker. And I say that because everything that's going on in this last year, you got people that have lost people from the pandemic. You got people that have had the pandemic, the coronavirus. You have people that have been affected by it in different ways. We've all been affected differently, depending on where you sat or who you knew or any of those type of things during this last year. And we always concentrate on the pandemic, but even the election has scarred some people to a certain extent, because if you truly believe in the systems that are established for this country and you see injustices or different things being done to sway the way things are done because certain people don't like it, it impacts you. But then I say again, we always talk about, and you hear me say, we got work to do, but what am I doing? What are my actions to follow up on that? Hold me accountable just like I would hold you accountable. But it seems as though accountability has walked out the door nowadays, because if I don't agree with what you said, everything you said it doesn't matter. They talk about the cancel culture and different things like that. Cancel culture has been going on for years and years. Cancel culture was going on during slavery, if you really want to go back there. But that's a conversation for another day. Because all the infighting that goes on between the different races, all the infighting that goes on between the opposite races, the infighting that goes on in families, this has been going on for centuries, and it will continue to go on no matter what, because everyone who has a difference of opinion may not see things the same way you see it, and it causes discord no matter who you are. But how do you move forward after that discord happens? And the biggest question is, with everything that's going on that I'm talking about, that I have been talking about, with all the different things we can think about, that we're talking about with systems per se, how are we as a country going to be able to move forward with any election after this last one without there being skepticism? How do we move forward within this, with whatever's going on over the last year, with the increase of the visibility of what is being considered racist and racism compared to what it was before? How do we move forward with those same people who don't see it as racism, but those that do? How do we continue to move forward to try to become better as individuals if we're treating the person that's right beside us as an enemy? How do we do this? These are all questions that come to my mind, and I'm sure they've come to your mind at times. Maybe not as in deep, and I'm not saying nobody's deep out there, but maybe not as in depth. But I have to look at it in this aspect because I do this show every Saturday morning. So I have to take into account the whole spectrum of people. I just can't be speaking to one block. Now, my block that I'm speaking to may all look like me, but I have to look at it at a perspective of everyone. However, when I put my own experiences in there, that's from my eyes, my view, my life, the way I see it. And as I always say before I start the show, if I can get someone to think differently than they did before they tuned in this morning, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But I would never do anything to try to change your mind. I just want you to see it differently than you may have looked at it before. Good morning, Jack Pennington. Appreciate the support, bro. That's all. That's all. I would encourage all of you. Take that time. Shut the TV off. Shut the news off. Put some jazz on. Put some jazz on and just let it ride. Put the jazz on and let it ride. Sometimes, it's just like I did something one time. I talked about something one time where we talk about a cleanse for your body. Because you're taking things in all the time. You're taking things in all the time. And it's just like a car engine is the comparison I did. And for y'all that heard this before, bear with me. But if you haven't, here we go. If you have a car engine and you're continually putting oil in, you're doing oil changes like you're supposed to. When you do the oil change, they take the screw out. Everything in that engine is not coming out. But they close it up after it stops dripping. They close it up. They put some more oil in. You keep on riding. But as years and years go by while you're doing that, you continue doing that, you're putting miles on it. There's gunk, is what they call it from a mechanic's perspective. There's gunk that builds up in the engine. And it causes that engine not to run at the level that it was when it was brand new. Not only because of the mileage, but because of the gunk that has built up in the engine. So it doesn't perform at its highest performance rate. So now take that and put it in the perspective of your body. When you eat, you ingest, you drink, all the things you do for your nourishment comes in your body, goes through your intestines, through your stomach and all that type of stuff. And we think we're being, once we, use the bathroom, we think we're expelling from our system everything that we've taken in on a normal basis. But there's certain things that get connected that attach themselves to your intestines that don't come out. And the only way you're going to get all that out is you're going to have to do a cleanse. A cleanse. A cleanse goes in there and it cleans out all the remnants of things that haven't come out naturally. And I put that in perspective to say this, just like a car engine, just like your intestines, you have to do it with your brain. You have to download certain things at certain times to get them out of your mental Rolodex and put them away and let them go. Because the longer you hold on to them, the more gunk builds up in your brain. And then your mindset changes from having a clear perspective of what's going on to a cloudy perspective because you've got so much going on up here and you haven't taken the time to purge or cleanse it from the unnecessary things that you hold on to over time, that you don't see clearly what exactly is going on from the perspective of what your views are and what is truly happening. And you tend to take it in and you get so much in there that it starts turning to other things of anger, lashing out, treating people differently, speaking in a way that is demeaning to folks because everything you've taken in is built up to the point that it becomes more of an action, a negative action, more than being something that is positive, spewing from your body, spewing from your mouth, spewing from the mentality of trying to get a better understanding of the world and of life. But the first thing you have to do is get a better understanding of who you are and who you've become. And the only way to do that is to purge your brain of those impurities. Let's call it impurities that you've allowed to build a home in your brain. Some of you get it, some of you don't. Let it process. It'll come to you. Mind, body, and soul. Let's do this mind, body, and soul. And I seen this before I came on. This is the year of self-help, self-love, mental health, working on ourselves. And it's also taking it one day at a time. And the quote for the day for the mind, body, and soul is very simple. Things don't change. We change. Things don't change. We change. things don't change. We change. I want you to look at yourself in 5 to 10 year increments. I want you to go back to when you was about 5 years old. Look at yourself. Think about what you was doing. If you really don't remember, find one of your old elementary school pictures and look at it and see the joy in your eyes. Then so good morning, bro. And look at the old pictures that you may have of yourself that you took, the one with the background looked like it was all flowers and everything. You know what I'm talking about. When you was 5 years old, kindergarten, just starting. And look at the innocence of who you were. The eyes. Look at the eyes. Look at the possibilities of what you've seen from your eyes at 5 years old. And then I want you to take and find you a picture of when you was about 10 years old. And I want you to look at those eyes again. And I want you to look at your face and the expressions that you have at 10 years old. Because at this point, you're really trying to figure out who you are. Your parents have put more responsibilities on you. You're becoming an individual. Look at your eyes in every one of these pictures that I'm talking about, and you'll get what I'm saying. And then find your picture when you were about 15. Hey, look at your graduation picture. Let's go all the way to when you graduated. And look at your eyes and look at how you look, and think about how you seen the world when you were about to become a citizen out here in this world doing big things because you've left the educational system behind. Look at your eyes. Look at your smile. Go through your yearbook. Look at who you were or who you professed that you were at that time by the writings of what people put in there about you and how you felt about yourself. And then find you a picture when you got to be about 24, 25. Now, I'm going to say back to 21. Let's go to 21. Let's start at 21. When they said you were, you could drink early. Before, when they said you were legal to drink, when people said you were 21, you were probably just getting ready to get out of college. You've been in college, or you've been, joined the military, whatever you did. At about 21, you're really trying to find your way. You find your niche. You're becoming who you think you're going to be. But what you haven't realized is you haven't even scratched the surface. You haven't even scratched the surface of who you are going to become because your experiences aren't there yet. And then find you a picture when you're about 25 to 30, somewhere in there. Because at that point in your life, majority of people are either married, in long-term relationships, you've got children by now. 25 to 30 is that point where you're becoming and you're realizing that the world is not all about you, and now responsibility has set in. Look at your eyes at that point. Think back to that point when you had your first child and you realized the responsibilities that come along with it. Now, some of us, I can speak for myself, started having children a little earlier, 21 years old maybe. But think about the responsibility that you had to take on, and then look at your eyes from when you were in kindergarten and in first grade and all these different things, and look at your eyes when the responsibilities changed and how it's changed you at that point. And then you get to be about 35, 40, somewhere in there, your life has been going good. Some people have gone through divorce. Some people have lost family members, all the different things that can impact your being. You start really adjusting and understanding that this is the time where life becomes important. Between the age of 35 and 40, that's when life becomes important to you. That's when you start thinking about the future. That's when you start thinking about your legacy. That's when you start thinking about how much longer you're going to have here and what kind of impact you're going to make. Look at your eyes in those pictures during that time. Think about what you were doing between the ages of 35 to 40, and your kids are growing up and they're going away to college, or they're graduating college, or whatever they may be doing. They're going out on their own. You don't have that responsibility anymore, because now the responsibility to become a man and a woman is their responsibility. You're just there to help guide them a little more. But look at your eyes. The eyes are openings to the soul, as they say. Look at those pictures. Think about those times. Think about what you were going through between 35 and 40. And for those that are at this point, now I want you to look at where you're at today. Excuse me. And when I say today, you may be 50, 55, 60. I ain't going to call nobody age, y'all. But when you hit that 50 mark, 40 is a milestone for most of us. We start seeing things differently. But when you hit the 50, it's like something snapped on. It's like the lights got brighter. It came to the realization that you realize that I got more years behind me than I got in front of me, more than likely. And I'm not saying that that's because of your lifestyle or anything like that. There's things that happen after 50 that we can't project. You can't project, I mean, you can't predict any of it. But at 50 years old, you start seeing things from the point of and the perspective that I'm 50. Some people we know didn't make it to 60. Some people we didn't know make it to 45. But now you start looking at things differently. And it's not that you're concentrating on the fact of when you might die, but you know that your years are numbered at a certain point in your life. So now you look at your eyes, you look at what you're doing, you look at the decision you make, you look at how you go through life on a daily basis, and you look at the things that you've accomplished over your life, and you start looking at the things that you want to do before the end of your life. You know, some people call it a bucket list. I don't call it a bucket list. I call it things that I'm going to accomplish. But you start looking at things differently. And then the question is, like this quote says, things don't change, we change. Because what happens through all that progress, through all that growth, we start seeing the world differently than we did at 5, than we did at 10, than we did at 15, than we did at 20, than we did at 21, and on and on and on. We start seeing the world differently. And it's not that the world has changed, but we've changed in how we see the world. We see how we interact with the world. We've changed because our experiences are of the world. And at that point, when you get to that point where you truly understand that things have not changed, you've changed more than the things have changed. You can always say, well, cars are different. This, you know, they got airplane. Cut that out. Look at the fact of what's changed about you in that growth process. And understand that, as you know, you hear that quote, as much as things change, they stay the same. No, they don't. Because everyone's experiences, everyone's trials and tribulations, everything you've been through, if you had a death, if you lost a parent, if you lost a child, if you lost a good friend, if you lost a marriage, if you lost something in your life, your perspective of life is going to be different going forward, no matter what it is, no matter how it is, and no matter how it happened. But the world around you is still running on the axis, rotating on a daily basis, another trip around the sun. 365 days are going to happen every year, and that's not going to change. But the only thing that changed in those 365 days is the way you view it and your perspective and your experiences. We got to change our mindset, people, that things are not changing. We're changing. The people's mindsets are changing. The way we see each other is changing. And why are these things changing? Because we've changed. You know, we see the pictures that people post all the time with the little black boy and the little white boy in school, and they're holding hands, and he's always put this phrase up there: racism is not something that is you're born with, it's taught. We all know that. But those two kids that they're talking about in that picture are going to change. Their experiences are going to change them, because that's a part of life. Because the little white child's experiences and the little black child experiences, because of who they are and how they look, their experiences are going to be different. And because of their experiences are going to be different, they're going to grow differently, and they're going to see through their eyes differently. And when you look at their pictures, you're going to see, by looking at those pictures and the way their eyes, the experiences are going to cause them to still have a twinkle, or there's going to be a dimming. It's either going to be a twinkle or it's going to be a dimming. The experiences dictate that. Your life experiences dictate that. Seeing our lives, seeing changes, change is good, as long as it's productive change. Don't fight it. But we have to get to the understanding, because we change, we can't expect others to stay the same. We all change, and our experiences change how we interact with people. And I don't care if it's your childhood friend or a person you met yesterday that becomes a friend. Your experiences, your life lessons, and everything that's going on with you is going to change over time. And that friendship's going to change. That relationship's going to change. Everything about life is going to change at some time. But that change happens with us because the world is still rotating on that 365-day axis to be 1 year, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years. Change happens within us for the good and the bad. Step away. Step away from everything that's going on in the world. Get back to yourself. Get back to knowing who you are. Get back to discovering who you are. Get back to being you. Because this world is harsh. This world is cold. But at the end of the day, you know who you are. You know who you were created to be. Get back to that. Don't let this world change you to be bitter. Don't let this world change you because of things that have happened to you, to be looking at people that everybody and nobody has their best interest out for you. But you have to change your mentality of what's important to you. And as they always say, and I've heard this many times, and I'm starting to get an understanding of it. When they always say, be the change that you want to see in the world. Be the change that you want to see in this world. It's a simple phrase, but it's a harder task. I appreciate everybody tuning in this morning. This was Unscripted. You know, I just wanted to get with y'all and let you know, turn the TV off, turn the news off, block out all those things that are coming in that are feeding your mind and feeding your soul and changing the perspective of who you are to become bitter, angry, all those different things, the emotions that we go through when we see these things on the news. Because here's the thing, and it's bad to say this, when George Floyd was killed on TV, and even to this day, on video, by a police officer, to this day, I'm still not okay about this. I still have problems with seeing that the day it happened when they started showing it. There's certain things that we'll see in life that will ingrain in our brains. And there's certain things that you're going to have to purge yourself from. But as you're purging yourself from those certain things, you have to understand certain things will impact you for the rest of your life. No matter how much you try to purge yourself, no matter how much you try to cleanse yourself, there are certain things that are going to impact you for the rest of your life. However, just because they impact you for the rest of your life, don't mean that they have to dictate how you continue to live for the rest of your life. Appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll be back again next week. Try to give y'all some information. We're going to try to, as I say, ease away from the politics and all these worldly events going on and get back to the substance of speak on it. Because we're going to speak on it, on life and different things that are going on us as a people across the board. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And as I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely, and I'm going to say this, everything that I spoke today, everything that I talked about, everything that you need to do when you do that retrospective thinking and you do that soul searching and you do all that, the one thing that you got to do, keep your faith in God, stand on his word, never waver in your faith. Never, ever waver in your faith. He's in control. And as long as we keep him at the head, we're good to go. We're good to go. God is the key. Love yourself, love one another. Keep your love yourself, love one another. Keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. I appreciate y'all. Have a good Saturday. I love y'all. I'll see y'all next week, and I'm out. Peace.